well in this difficult period. This is the fourth session of the California Zoroastrian Center's seminar, Liberating Zarathustra's Relevance. And the title of this session is Heaven, Hell, Chinvat and Frashokereiti. Be prepared for some surprises. Let us start with some facts. In the Garters, there is no mention of any of the following ideas. No final judgment, whether end of life or end of times, in which a soul is judged to determine its fate in the afterlife. No place of reward to which a good person is sent after death, and no place of punitive tortures to which a bad person is sent after death. These ideas are also absent from all other Avestan texts that I'm aware of that were composed during Avestan times. And as you will see, there is no place for these ideas. They simply do not fit in Zarathustra's framework of thought. Yet many translators, Zoroastrians and non-Zoroastrians, have interpretively read these ideas into the Garters and have announced with pride that Zarathustra invented the idea of heaven and hell as places of reward and punishment. How did this happen? Let me show you. The idea of a punitive hell of tortures first appeared in Pahlavi texts, all of which, so far as we know, were written after the Arab invasion of Iran. One of these texts complained that people were in doubt and no longer believed in the elaborate rituals and purifications mandated by the priestly establishment, none of which are found in the Garters. So an assembly of priests was convened, which decided that a young priest, Viraf, would take a drug-induced journey to the spirit world and bring back information from the spirits that would address such doubts. This text says, "It is necessary that one of us may go and bring intelligence from the spirits, that the people shall know whether these Yazishan and Drun and Afringan ceremonies and Nirang prayers and ablution and purifications attain unto God and come to the relief of our souls or not." Then those dasturs of the religion filled 3 golden cups with wine and the narcotic of Vishtasp, and he, Viraf, swallowed the wine and slept upon the carpet. When Viraf woke up, he dictated to a scribe that 2 angels had given him a guided tour of a place in which the souls of the wicked were punished by tortures, and also a place of mostly, not all, but mostly material delights in which the souls of the good were rewarded. The fact that 8 chapters describe the good rewards and 82 chapters describe with incredibly cruel details laid down like a code of law, describe the punishments, shows us their intent, control through fear. Let us now look at Zarathustra's ideas regarding the good ends, which for convenience I will call heaven or paradise, and the bad ends, which for convenience I will call hell. We need to be aware of 3 important things, as you will see, that we have long forgotten. First, Zarathustra's notion of the good and bad ends are not places of reward and punishment. They are states of being. Second, these states of being do not begin after death. They start in mortal existence. In the Gathas, the division is not between this life and an afterlife. The division is between an existence that is bound by mortality, the arena for the perfecting process, and one that is no longer bound by mortality, non-deathness, ameritha, when the perfecting process is complete. Third, in Avestan, there are no capital letters and no articles the or a, but to make an English translation fluent, we have to add such words. If we add the good end, it implies one final good end. If we add a good end, it implies one of many good ends. So which did Zarathustra intend? Well, judge for yourself. But when for convenience I use the, please remember it equally could be a. Let's start with heaven. He uses many terms for the good end. Here I will discuss just 3 of them. They are house of good thinking, house of song, and most good existence. These are not 3 separate heavens. They are 3 different ways of describing one state of being. Now you may object that house is a place, not a state of being. But in the Garters, house and its related words like dwelling place, dwells, etc., are often used as metaphors for a state of being. Here is one example. There are many more. Zarathustra says, there shall be yoked from the good dwelling place of good thinking, the swiftest steeds which shall race ahead unto the good fame of wisdom and of truth. Now, good thinking is a quality, an activity. So the only good dwelling place in which good thinking could exist is in a living being that houses this quality or activity. And does this heavenly state of being begin in an afterlife? In this verse, as in many others, clearly not. It says that those from the good dwelling place of good thinking shall race ahead unto the good fame of wisdom and of truth, a race that is run in mortal existence. These conclusions are consistent with other Gatha verses that we have seen in past sessions that show that we mortals have this divine quality, good thinking, imperfectly in our beings, and that for mortals, good thinking is the incremental comprehension of truth. Here is one example. Zarathustra says, truth, shall I see thee as I continue to acquire good thinking. So housing good thinking in our beings begins in mortal existence, where it continues to increase incrementally many good ends of imperfect enlightenment, evolving into a state of being that eventually houses a complete, perfected understanding of truth, the ultimate good end, a completely enlightened state of being. Similarly, as I mentioned in the last session, I think Zarathustra uses house of song as a metaphor for a state of being that houses the bliss, the high we feel when we sing or listen to beautiful music, a state of happiness which we experience imperfectly in mortal existence. Which brings us to the 3rd term for heaven, a most good existence. Clearly a state of being, not a place. What does Zarathustra mean by a most good existence? Well, let's see what ancient Zoroastrians thought. In Avestan, the word vahishta, most good, is the superlative degree of vahu, good, which means intrinsic goodness. In later Avestan texts, a most good existence is the most frequently used term for the good end and is described as follows. Vahishtemahumashraunam yazamaide rauchankem vispokvatrem. The most good existence of the truth possessing. We celebrate light, all happiness. Here, as in the Garters, the superlative degree of intrinsic goodness, most good, describes those who personify the true, correct order of existence and the enlightenment, the bliss this brings. But in the Garters, Zarathustra takes us a step further. He uses most good as a word of art in rich, kaleidoscopic, multi-dimensioned ways. Here I will just summarize. The most good is a name for the divine, who is truth personified. Most good describes the qualities of the divine, a beneficial way of being, which is the true, correct order of existence, truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule, truth personified. Most good Vahishta describes wisdom's teachings, as well as the thoughts, words, and actions that implement them, the path of truth in mortal existence. And most good Vahishta is the ultimate good end, which is truth personified completely, an enlightened, blissful state of being. Each of these are a or the most good existence, Zarathustra's paradise. Looking at this summary, we begin to understand that to Zarathustra, truth, the true correct order of existence, is the superlative degree of intrinsic goodness. And it reflects Zarathustra's rethinking of the nature of the divine, as I explained in one of the past sessions. And this is reflected in the later name for the religion of goodness, Dini Behi. And we see that the most good existence, which is Zarathustra's paradise, is a state of being that starts in mortal existence with the path of truth. We create paradise, multiple good ends, each time we make existence most good with our thoughts, words, and actions of truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule, incrementally evolving to the ultimate good end, personifying truth completely, which is the ultimate paradise, the most good existence. Zarathustra also expresses the foregoing conclusions about the incremental and ultimate good ends in many verses, in which each of the 7 divine qualities is what earns the reward, and it is also the reward itself. Here are a few examples. First example, in the Garters, salvation is being saved not from damnation and a hell of tortures. It is being saved from untruth, from all that is false, wrong. He says, salvation for the truthful. Let that salvation of yours be granted to us, truth allied with good thinking. In the first quotation, being truthful is what earns salvation. In the second quotation, truth and its comprehension are salvation itself. So salvation, being truthful, comprehending truth, consists of many good ends, which start in mortal existence. And salvation is also the ultimate good end, a completely enlightened state of being. Here is a second example. I'm going to reduce this so that the quotations are not hidden. There we go. He says, those whom thou dost know to be just and deserving in conformity with truth and good thinking, for them do thou fulfill their longing with these attainments. Here, truth and good thinking are what earn the reward, and they are the reward itself. And we see corroborating evidence in a very lovely later text. At least this part of it is lovely. I can't seem to, there we go. To anyone among living beings who has the desire to win the most good, he has said for both existences, it is in the association of truth, then in the union of truth. Here the good ends to be won is the superlative degree of intrinsic goodness, the most good, Vahishta, a state of being that is equated with truth, both the path and the ultimate good end. And here, winning the most good applies to both existences, which in the Garters are the existences of matter and mind. So good ends, truth personified, start and are eventually completed in mortal existence, a completeness which enables the transition to an existence no longer bound by mortality, Amrita. In the Garters, completeness, Harvata, and non-deathness, Amrita, are qualities of the divine, which mortals are capable of attaining. Finally, there are two bits of corroborating evidence from even later texts, which are among my favorites. First, a word of explanation. In the Garters, truth, its comprehension, good thinking, and wisdom are linked with various forms of light, sunlight, fire. Why sunlight? Well, truth in its comprehension enlightens. Wisdom is a completely enlightened state of being. And sunlight was the strongest form of light they knew. Today we have supernovas and quasars, but in those days it was sunlight. But why fire? Well, one reason out of many may have been that in those days, fire was the only form of light that man could make. With that, let us look at the corroborating evidence, which I think is so beautiful. An Avestan fragment describes our attainment of paradise in metaphoric incremental steps, which are states of being. It states, the first step placed him in the good thought paradise. The second step placed him in the good word paradise. The third step placed him in the good deed paradise. The fourth step placed him in the endless lights. And in the Pahlavi Bundahishan, the divine is named endless light. Those of you who scoff at good thoughts, good words, and good deeds as, quote, just ethics, might want to reconsider. You well may question, why does Zarathustra cloak these ideas so enigmatically? Why doesn't he just come out and say what he means? I think for many reasons, but perhaps the most important has to do with human ego. To think that we can become divine could be quite intoxicating to human ego, leading to arrogance, dictatorial behavior, the cause of so many problems, suffering, and retarding one of Zarathustra's most fundamental teachings, essential for the evolution of the soul, the freedom to choose, and the enlightenment that comes from experiencing the consequences of our choices. Perhaps Zarathustra had in mind the example of Yima, Jamshid, whose pride and arrogance were a sure sign that he had not yet attained the state of pure goodness, that is completeness, truth personified. For in pure goodness, in completeness, there is no place for pride and arrogance. Yima's pride and arrogance were foolish. Pure goodness, truth personified, is wisdom. Let us take a quick look at Zarathustra's ideas about what we call hell. True, his ideas include the darker, more painful realities of our material existence. But they also include the seeds of salvation from untruth. As such, they fit Zarathustra's idea of an order of existence that is wholly good. He has many terms for the bad ends and their qualities, all of which are states of being. Most bad existence, a state of being. The house of worst thinking, a state of being that houses worst thinking. The house of deceit, untruth, a state of being that houses what is false, wrong, mistaken, ignorant. Unhappiness, a quality of being, and two metaphors. Darkness, for a state of being that lacks understanding, is in the dark, unenlightened. And foul food, for the vices that poison our souls. As you can see, all these states of being exist in mortal existence. But Zarathustra takes us a step further. In the Garters, these states of being exist only in mortal existence. These terms describe an unperfected state of being, wrong-headed, ignorant, mistaken. And in the Garters, mortal existence is the arena for the perfecting process. These hells in mortal existence include, in part, the law of consequences, that we reap what we sow, that what we do, good and bad, comes back to us. To that extent, we create our own hells here in the material existence. But these hells also include the many unearned calamities and also the wrongful choices of others, the hells that are caused by the wrongful choices of others, that cause us grief, suffering. All these hells, earned and unearned, are not for punishment. They are for enlightenment. They sculpt our souls. These hells, earned and unearned, together with our good experiences and mutual loving help between the divine, man, and all the living, are necessary parts of the perfecting process, which occurs in mortal existence. So an unperfected being remains bound by mortality until the perfecting process is complete, at which time it is pure goodness, pure light, truth personified, and makes the transition to a state of being that is no longer bound by mortality, non-deathness, Ameritat. This explains why in the Gathas and other Avestan texts that were composed during Avestan times, there is a complete absence of hell as a place of punishment in the afterlife. There simply is no place for it in Zarathustra's framework of thought. Which brings us to the Chinvat Bridge. Chinvat Bridge has been translated interpretively as Bridge of the Judge, Account Keeper's Bridge, Bridge of the Separator, etc., injecting into this Gatha term other religious paradigms in which God judges a person after death, separates the good from the bad, as though any human being at death is either all good or all bad, sends the so-called good to heaven and throws the so-called bad into hell. But if we give Chinvat Bridge its literal meaning, the problem disappears. There is no dispute that Perethu means bridge. As for Chinvato, Insler, citing Bartholomew, says it derives from chi, to discern, decide. So, what is discerned, decided, after a soul dies and arrives at this bridge? By whom? For what purpose? And is this a physical bridge? Well, with a non-material soul would not need a physical bridge to make a crossing of any kind. So bridge has to be a metaphor. I think it represents transition to a non-mortal existence when the soul has become perfected. And I think what is discerned, decided at this metaphoric bridge is a storytelling way of expressing exactly that, whether the soul has become perfected and can make the transition, cross the bridge. And in the Garters and certain later texts, the soul itself is involved in this process of discerning, deciding. A notion of self-judgment, perhaps with the assistance of the divine within. Which brings us to Frashokereiti. In Zarathustra's thought, everyone will eventually make it to the ultimate good end, truth personified. There are no rejects. This is not a feel-good palliative to tame our fears of an unknown afterlife. Zarathustra's paradigm of the assured, certain good end combines the beauty of pure logic and the spirituality of a divine order of existence that is wholly good. We will discuss this paradigm in the next session. Here I will simply say that the certain assured good end was so foundational, as Dina confirms, that it is expressed even in later Avestan and Pahlavi texts. Frashokereiti in later Avestan, Frashgard in Pahlavi, even though today we have largely forgotten what those words mean. Insula demonstrates that Frashokereiti came from a phrase in the Garters. In essence, Frasho means healing existence from all that is false, wrong. And Kereiti means making it happen. But I think that there is a play on words here, showing us how existence is so healed by forwarding existence to truth. I have explained the linguistics in a footnote. I would like to leave you with a question. I always do this, don't I? Place it on the back burner of your mind and let your mind play over it. Given the freedom to choose, a core teaching of Zarathustra, how is it possible for the good end to be inevitable? We will consider this paradox in the next session. And with that, I welcome your questions. Let's see, is there anything in the chat room? Oh, we have. The first is from, is it the first? Yes, from Soli Dastur. He says, in Yasna 46:10, Zarathustra mentions Chinvat Bridge. You're right, Soli. I don't remember the verse itself, the number, but Zarathustra mentions Chinvat Bridge in 3 Gatha verses. And if you're interested, I have a chapter on my website under part 3 that discusses Chinvat Bridge. It's called Chinvat, the Bridge of Discerning. And towards the end of it, there is really a lovely little mini puzzle that I think you will like, which I like anyway. Okay, the next is from Guita Barhampur to everyone. Dina, the ultimate good end. There are signs of a good end, some of which are seen by the dying person as he is dying, and some which may be visible to others. How does a good end? I'm not sure I understand the last part. How does a good end end?
That's your message. It's your message. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my
Sure.
questions. The question is it's about your message, the ultimate good end.
Not my message, what I see in Zarathustra.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm receiving it from you. Thank you so much for your teaching. So the question is, what do you mean about good end? I mean, good is how I feel. I feel good. And when I have a good thought, that makes me feel good. When I have a bad thought, it makes me feel bad. So it's very simple what it is good and bad to me, but I'm not sure what is it good and bad to you that it ends. Thank you.
That is a really, really good question. In English, we use good for so many things. We say, oh, that horror movie is really good. Or we say, oh, that's a good joke. Or this restaurant is really good.
Because they all made me feel good. That's simple.
Right. Well, you've got a point there. From what I see in Zarathustra's teachings, the ultimate good end is when we personify truth, a state of being that comprehends, and a wholly enlightened state of being with no mixture of bad in it. You know, by bad, I mean...
Who's the judge?
Cruel, destructive, violent,
Who's the judge?
harmful, that kind of thing.
Who's
You
the judge?
yourself are the judge. You yourself are the judge. That is what is so interesting. There is a later text which sort of makes a big story about this Chinvat bridge thing, you know. And in that text, it says, actually, it's the earliest version of that story is an Avestan fragment, and then it's repeated in Pazan and Pahlavi texts. So it says, when a soul approaches Chinvat bridge, it sees this beautiful woman, and it says, who are you? I've never seen anyone as beautiful as you. And the woman says, I am not a beautiful woman, I am your good deeds. Your good thoughts, your good words, your good deeds that you did when you were on the earthly plane. Now, my question is, to whom does that maiden appear beautiful? Not to God or Russian, which is, or, you know, there are many versions of what happens at Chinvat Bridge. She appears good or beautiful to the soul itself. And that to me is a concept of self-judgment.
So the person who experienced it?
Well, Zarathustra teaches that we have something of the divine within, right? Maybe it is this spark of the divine within that helps us to make good judgments. Now, while we are imperfect, our judgments are going to be imperfect, but we are educated.
Isn't that duality? The Zoroastrian believes duality, that when you judge, always there's good and bad. But I thought Zoroastrians don't believe in duality. I'm not sure. I'm a student, so I don't know. Do the Zoroastrians believe in duality?
There are many kinds of duality. A duality of two divine beings? No,
yes.
That's not in the Garters.
Okay, I thought so.
But a duality of what is right or wrong, good or bad, harmful or beneficial,
right.
That kind of duality is very much in the Garters.
That's a judgment, and that's the consequences of our actions. Thank you so much. That's a different one. Thank you so much for that answer.
Rita. I appreciate the question.
Very nice. Appreciate that.
Okay. Is it possible, this is from Nilu, is it possible to get the recording of this meeting? I think CCC has it on its website. If you email me, I'll give you where you can find it, okay? Farshid to everyone, question for Dina. Does the word spirit exist in the Garters? If so, doesn't spirit relate to life after death? I assume Urvan, Ravan, soul, relates to the life we live in here. Farshid, that's a good question. Manu has been translated as spirit. But if you look at each use of Manu in the Garters, you will see that spirit does not fit each use. The only English equivalent that fits each use of Manu in the Garters is a way of being. Now, I think in this life, it's hard to express this concept for me. A perfected soul no longer needs a material body, because the material body is what enables it to engage in the kinds of experiences that perfect the soul. So I think once the soul is perfected, it no longer needs a body, and its way of being is no longer material. So if you want to call that spirit, that's okay. But I would advise not using spirit, because spirit has been used in other religious paradigms in ways that confuse the issue. Before we become perfected, while we are unperfected beings, we are a mix of good and bad. And in the material world, I think our way of being includes both matter and mind, the material and the abstract. So it's the Zarathustra's paradigm is different from the paradigm of most other religions in this area. Farshid, I don't know if I'm explaining this to your satisfaction. Please feel free to interrupt or ask me for further, if you have any further questions. Okay. Then I think the next one from Guita we have already covered, right?
Yes, we did. Thank you so much.
Okay. Then from Rebecca, Zarathustra talks about the souls returning back. What's your interpretation of that? Does that mean reincarnation? Well, I'm glad someone asked that. In the Garters, there is a verse which Tharapurvala says expresses the notion of reincarnation. Other linguists say, no, it doesn't. It's a verse that has not yet been decoded.
Paragraph?
So I cannot say that the Garters specifically say there either is.
I'm sorry, could you mute yourself? If you don't have any questions, please mute yourself.
Yes, please mute.
Okay, so I cannot truthfully say that in the Garters,
show me on this.
Either there is or is not reincarnation. However, there has to be reincarnation if Zarathustra, if his ideas are the way he expresses them in the Gathas, for two reasons. He says life is an evolution to perfection, or life progresses to perfection from a mixed state of being to a wholly good state of being. Well, we know that by the time we die, nobody is wholly good, at least not in our reality. Well, maybe some of the great souls who have come to show us the way, but most of us are not wholly good at the time we die. So if Zarathustra's teaching is true, then there would have to be other opportunities for this perfecting process to continue. The other thing is, Zarathustra teaches that God is wholly good. And in his notion of Asha is included justice. Now, if you look at the human condition, could someone, whoever is talking, please mute? Thanks. Now, if you look at the human condition, there is no way any realistic person could think that it is just. Some little babies are born with birth defects, others are not. Is that just? Some adults are caught in a tsunami. Everything they have is destroyed, their families, their homes, everything. Others are not caught in a tsunami, and they have happy families, good homes. Is that just? Some are born with disabilities or even acquired disabilities. Others do not. Some experience poverty, pain, physical debility. Others do not. So if God is just, and if there is only this one lifetime, there's no way he could be just. Zarathustra would be wrong in saying that God is just. Yet I will tell you, every time I have thought Zarathustra was wrong, when I was studying the Garters, on further study, I realized it was I who was wrong because I just did not see what he was driving at. So in my view, whether the reason is because Zarathustra speaks of a loving, just, good God, or whether you speak about the justice of throwing someone who has done some good into hell, or sending someone who has done some bad to heaven, no matter which way you look at it, there have to be some other opportunities for the perfecting process to continue if Zarathustra is being accurate. So I think whether it's back here on earth or in some other reality, I don't know. And Zarathustra doesn't say, but some form of what we call reincarnation, in other words, re-entering the material existence, I think is necessary if we're going to believe the rest of what Zarathustra says. Manik, we have ethical duality, not the duality of the creator Ahura-Mazda. Well, Manik, I'm going to shock you. In a future session,
Right. I don't know how to write.
In a future session, I'm going to explore that idea. So give me a pass for now, okay? Keki Dadachanji, if the soul fails to transition to the non-mortal existence, what happens to that soul? Good question. Well, in this Ardha Virafnama book, it says that the souls of everything is either good or wicked. I mean, they have no gray areas. So it says the souls of the wicked fall off the bridge. So where do they wind up? Well, the way this text describes it, it describes a very unpleasant, but definitely material or earthly existence. An arid, desert-like place, stinky, just very unpleasant, but all the descriptions of it are material. So I surmise from that they were recounting an earlier tradition in a faulty way, in which we go back to the material existence, maybe after a period of time to rest, reflect, assess what we have done good, assess what we have not done good, perhaps with the assistance of the divine, so that the rest period or whatever, I'm just speculating, after death would also be part of the perfecting process until we can go back to the material world and experience what we need to experience to perfect. In Zarathustra's thought, wisdom is experience-based. So.
Dina, if I may just continue on that question a
little.
little.
Sure, please do, Keki.
So if we were to reject the postulate of reincarnation, and we also set aside Ardha Viraf's description of what happens when one falls down from Chinvat Frashokereiti, then where are we left? In terms of the people who do not believe in reincarnation, how would they explain what happens if you really don't cross the bridge?
Right. I think that's a good point. All I can say is there are the ones you yourself have pointed out and others, there are so many arguments that require the conclusion that there have to be other opportunities for the perfecting process to continue. And I know of, given a good God, a God who is loving and just, I know of no other alternative that makes sense. Good point, Keki. Okay, let me see. Mandana, you can find all recordings of Dina. Oh, okay, thank you, Mandana. Thank you. So then I won't have to put that up. Artemis, everyone, please mute. Good idea, Artemis. Farshid, thanks for your response. I don't like the word spirit either. Spirit is used in Hollywood movies and other places. True, true, true. From Artemis, according to the Garters, does our soul with our mortal identity and being exist after death, or our soul, like drops of water, join the ocean and become a part of the ocean, losing its mortal contained identity? Artemis, that's a wonderful question. I know I'm saying this to everyone, but the questions are really good. I can only give you my speculation because Zarathustra doesn't specifically address this issue. The way it seems to me is that we are fragmented. If you look at existence as a whole, we are fragments of existence. Why are we fragmented? To enable the perfecting process in 1,000,001 different experiences and arenas, etc. So in my view, that when we merge into the divine. And Artemis, there is something specific that...
Dina, we can't hear you. Can you speak louder?
I will do my best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There is something specific that supports this idea that I have just expressed. The material link to Harvatat, which is completeness, which is a perfected state of being, is water. Now, water can exist in many separate forms: droplets, the ocean, rivers, lakes. But when you take two bodies of water and put them together, the separation ceases to exist.
Dina, we still can't hear you.
I don't know what the problem
Yeah,
is.
I think you might have put a paper or something over the speaker because there was...
Yeah, your microphone probably. We can't hear you.
No, my microphone
I heard
is...
shuffling.
Did you hear my talk when I gave the talk?
Yes, yes.
Well,
There was some shuffling and then your voice went away. So it might be that something
I don't have any papers here with me. In fact, I went and got a little iPad because the first session they complained that when I turned my pages, they couldn't hear. So I don't know what to tell you. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Much better, thanks.
Okay. So if you think of the material link, Harvatat is perfection, a perfected state of being, and its material link is water. And when you put two bodies of water together, two or more, or five or six, you just have one body of water. In the same place, the material link for truth, good thinking, its comprehension, and wisdom is fire and sunlight. If you put two fires together, the separation ceases to exist. You have one fire, right? So this leads me to believe I'm on the right track when I think that the separation of individual souls and fragments, if you want to call it, of existence, exists only in the unperfected state. It no longer exists in the perfected state. Silu, how do you explain Yasna 30.3 reference to twin spirits? Is that a suggestion of duality? Well, that's not a suggestion of duality as two uncreated beings or two gods or two deities. In my view, I think the way the verse says is that in the beginning, there were two ways of being, twins who are famed to be in conflict. Now, and this is important, the more good and the bad. Zarathustra uses vahya, which is the comparative degree of vahu, good. Now, translators all translated the good and the bad, but that's not what Zarathustra says. He says the more good and the bad. And in Yasna 45:2, he talks about the two manu, the two ways of being the more spenta. He doesn't say spenta, he says spanya, which is the comparative degree of spenta, beneficial. So the more beneficial and the harmful. Now this, to me, indicates, this use of the comparative indicates an evolutionary suggestion. In other words, you go from good to more good to most good, right? And the use of more good suggests an evolutionary process with these two ways of being, which fits exactly with Zarathustra's, the rest of his framework, where he talks about the unperfected existence, evolving, progressing to the ultimate good end, which is the perfected existence. So to answer you, Selu, I do not think those two twins, and there's another thing, twins exist in one container, right? One womb. That suggests to me that these two spirits, the harmful and the more beneficial, the bad and the more good, exist in one container, a way of being. So I think that pertains to all the living. It doesn't just pertain to deities. From Naveed, do we have evidence to believe that the material world is the sole realm of spiritual growth, learning, and perfecting of the soul? Or is it possible to continue learning in the spiritual mental realm? Basically, is returning back to material existence the only possibility for learning? Well, I can only tell you what I see in the Garters, and that is that the material world is the matrix for the perfecting process. Is it the only matrix? The Garters don't say that. It's possible that there are other arenas for the perfecting process. But the Garters speak in terms of the existences of matter and mind, the material and the abstract. And all of the perfecting that I have come across is done in the material existence. Does that mean we don't continue this perfecting process in the abstract material, spiritual, mental existence? I cannot answer that question. I do not know. It's possible that we do, but in Zarathustra's, in the Garters at least, and in certain Avestan texts, the division is not between this life and an afterlife. The division is between an unperfected existence and a perfected existence. That's the best I can tell you, Naveed. So, Rebecca, we can't hear you. I'm sorry, Rebecca. Rita, is twin spirit thoughts, good thoughts and bad thoughts, or twin spirit is duality? Well, in that Yasna 30.3, the two ways of being, manu, are the bad, akka, and the more good, vahya. So I think it pertains to human beings. It does not pertain to deities. That's the best I can tell you.
Thank you. Can I just clarify something? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Is that okay? Thank you so much. I just wanted to say, in order that you were talking about perfecting process, I found it very interesting. You know what? I'm always trying to perfect in myself, but I fail every day. But I'm trying
Me
to work
too.
very hard to
Join the
perfect
club,
myself
kiddo.
into better Gita, but it just doesn't work. But that's not the point. The point is that in order for you to be in the process, you have to be present in the moment.
Yeah.
That means you have to know what you're thinking, what you're saying, and what you're doing, which is the basis of Zoroastrianism. And if we do not know what we're thinking, what we're saying, or what we're doing, so maybe we're not we're not going to be in the process. So thank you very much. I just wanted to
That's a
say
good
that.
comment.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That
Well
is
said.
absolutely good and true. Dolat, you have such a frown on your face. What's troubling you, kiddo?
I was just typing my question, wanted to make sure I'm correct because I do things perfectly.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. I thought I was the only one who was allowed to be imperfect. You mean you do things imperfectly too? All right. Dolat, could the idea of only imperfect and perfect be related to that dark is absence of light? Bringing light to the dark is one way to think of the process of perfection. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yes. Yes. I think, in fact, that ties into so many of Zarathustra's thoughts, including mutual loving help. You know, no one can make it on their own. To make it, we have to both give and receive help. And that's how we bring light to the darkness.
Can I say one more thing here? Because I even see, you know, kind of this idea when there are conflicts, when people have conflicts, it's actually to slow it down and to really understand what's behind the conflict. Then you see the growth that the conflict is asking for.
Yeah.
So conflict is not bad. It's the dark that is asking for the light.
Right. It's an opportunity, really, for growth. Conflict is an opportunity for growth. So it took me a long time to learn that. When I was in conflict, I was very, confrontational. But if I can understand what the other person is thinking and feeling and try to address their concerns and try to explain to them where I'm coming from, then it's a good way, to resolve the conflict maybe. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, because people are mixes of matter and mind, and a part of that is angry emotions or prejudices or...
But I guess my point is that those are the darkness, and
Yeah.
we can hear each other is the lights coming together. Then it's the joining, it's the Horvatad idea. So I just wanted to...
Good point. I agree. Okay, Mandana, what if the perfecting process is not for individuals, but for the entire humanity as a whole? We are just a vehicle to make this happen. So no coming back, reincarnation is necessary. Well, that's one way of looking at it, Mandana. But let me put it this way. I am not wise enough to give you eternal truths. I can only tell you, A, what I see in Zarathustra's teachings, and B, what my own thinking tells me. Now, I have a lot of faults. And when I die, I am not under any illusion that those faults will be gone. That, I will die with those, some maybe better, but certainly not perfected. So if I'm a part of the whole, which I believe Zarathustra teaches, those faults of mine will also be a part of the whole. In other words, unless everyone makes it, no one makes it. As long as there's anyone left behind who has not been perfected, None of us is perfected. That is the whole conception of being part of the whole. As I understand Harvard, it's perfection at an individual and a collective level. So that's the best I can explain it. So let me see. But does the state, this is Farshid, but does the state of perfection exist? Isn't perfection a state of stagnation? Life is constant process of improving. Today's perfect state is not so perfect tomorrow. That is a matter
Who's the
of
judge?
thinking, and that is a good point. The way I look at it, Farshid, is this. Because we are a mix of bad and more good, harmful and beneficial, more beneficial, we are imperfect.
This is duality.
So,
Does Zarathustra believe in duality? I'm sorry, I've interrupted. That's duality. You're teaching duality.
Well,
Does Zoroastrian believe in duality?
That is a type of duality, a duality of qualities, not a duality of deities.
Yeah. But do the Zoroastrian, that's fine. I just want to clarify to make sure.
Let me answer Farshid's question.
Okay, thank you so much.
I can
we come back to duality. Thank you so much.
Okay, so definitely today's so-called perfect state, what we perceive as perfect, is not so perfect tomorrow. You're right. Is there such a thing as complete perfection? Zarathustra thinks so. Because I am so imperfect, I do not know myself. And I have often wondered, okay, if I progress and evolve and become completely perfect, completely good, what happens after that? Do we just sit around being completely good?
That's duality.
Perfect? That would be
you're
really
teaching
boring.
duality. You're teaching duality.
That would be really boring. The only thing if we look at our lives, every day is an adventure, right? Maybe when we reach this state of complete perfection, that could be the start of a new adventure. What that new adventure is, I haven't the foggiest idea. Speculations. So, okay, now let me see, where are we? Oh, Greta, did you want me to address something there, please?
Yes, I just thank you. I'm almost rude now. Sorry. Yeah. See,
You're enthusiastic.
I just want to make sure that I completely understand that there's no right and wrong. I mean, what do I know? But I just want to make sure that I completely understand the difference between duality and reality. What's real is I am talking to you. The duality is what I'm thinking that I'm talking to you.
Not necessarily.
Okay, I just want to open the duality. Thank you so much.
Consider, well, if you think of duality as in terms of good and bad, if someone is being tortured, that's not in my mind. That is people say good is just, or good is just the absence of evil, or evil is the absence of good. I'm sorry, that's what they say. Evil is just the absence of good. Right. I don't think so. In the Garters, certainly there are many descriptions of affirmative, hostile, violent, cruel, pain-inflicting evil. That is not just the absence of good. That is an affirmative type of evil in thought, word, and action. I don't think duality exists only in the mind. I think duality exists in the reality of
Thank you. That's all I want to make sure that I understand. You believe that duality exists in reality. That's all I wanted to make sure.
But you're welcome to disagree with me. I don't know.
No. Who am I to disagree with the teacher?
No.
but thank you. No, thank you.
Disagree. Anyone should disagree. That's one of the beautiful things about Zarathustra's thought. There is nothing about a guru in Zarathustra's thought. So don't think of me as a teacher. Think
You're
of
the
me as
teacher.
a fellow student who has studied and who is just sharing my perceptions of Zarathustra's teachings. So you must disagree with me if you don't agree. Be strong, disagree. Okay, so let's see, Manik. Questioning is encouraged in our religion. Ahurim Farashna Ashavanem Ashahe Ratum Yazamaide is in the Havan prayer, if I'm not mistaken. Manik, I don't really remember what is in the Havan, but I will tell you one thing, I agree with you. Questioning is encouraged in our religion. One of my favorite names for the divine in the Urmas Yasht is, I am he of whom questions may be asked. And in a Pahlavi text, there's selections from Zadsparam. Zadsparam was a high priest, although he wasn't universally popular, but I think he was a really good guy. And he tells a story of Zarathustra. He comes out of the Daiti River after having bathed, and he sees this person of light, Vahuman, who takes Zarathustra to an assembly. And the assembly, we learn later, are all the other qualities of the divine. And he puts Zarathustra in the seat of the inquirers, quote unquote, so that Zarathustra can ask questions of Ahura Mazda. I really like that. You know, we need to ask questions. That asking questions is the beginning of. Okay, so Manik, I agree. Artemis, I think Zarathustra talked about the living, and no one knows what happens when we die, including Zarathustra. Of course, Artemis, you are right. Well, I should qualify that. Most of us don't know. I can't tell you what Zarathustra knew or didn't know, but I can tell you that most of us don't know what's on the other side. The best we can, but we all have inquiring minds. And as long as we have inquiring minds, we're going to question what is on the other side. Is there nothing? Is there something? My own feeling is, if we believe in a God who is A, intelligent, B, good, and C, truth personified, truth including all the good qualities, because truth, the way Zarathustra uses it, is the true, correct order of existence. So it includes what is both accurate and what is right, correct, right. If we believe in that, I don't see how there would have to be some.
Dina, stop for a second. Lift your arms up. It's Karishma here. Lift your arms up. Great. Now we'll be able to hear you.
Am I blocking the? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I thought you were gonna shoot me, Karishma. Hands up. Anyway.
Somebody else pointed it out very sweetly. They also observed it. They were writing a comment to you.
Okay. So I think if you believe in a God who is intelligent and good, you have to believe in some sort of an afterlife that makes sense, because just our material existence is neither just nor good. I mean, it's too much of a mix. That's my way of, there's a lot of good in our material existence, and there's a lot of evil. So anyway, so Artemis, you're right. Nobody knows what happens when we die. Whether Zarathustra knew or not, I can't say. Naveed, we are physical beings with mental, spiritual aspects. Some call that our consciousness, or some call that our consciousness or soul, these are often referred to as separate, but resident in what we refer to as the individual. What does Zarathustra say about this separation of the mental and physical worlds as it relates to the individual? Well, beg pardon? Well, each time Zarathustra talks, not each time, but at least twice and possibly 3 times, I can't remember now, he speaks of the existences of matter and mind. And are they combined in an individual? I think you're right, Naveed. I think they are. Our physical beings in our reality, in this reality, combine the material and the spiritual. But for those of us who believe in a spiritual evolution to perfection or completeness or holy truth personified, goodness, however you want to call it, harvatat, completeness, that would have to include, that would have to be a spiritual existence, because the material existence is the matrix for the perfecting process. So once the perfecting process is over, the material existence isn't needed. Naveed, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best I can tell you. Okay. Rebecca, how does Zarathustra talk about the reconciling third force that connects the opposites? How does Zarathustra talk about the reconciling third force that connects the opposites? Can you clarify that a little? I'm not sure I understand what this third force is.
Dina, I let my husband
explain. Hi, sorry.
Hi.
You know, when we look at opposites, you know, things that are in opposition, there's something connecting the two. You look at it in nature, you know, electrons, protons, neutrons. It's sort of a dynamics.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I see.
yes. And there's something that kind of reconciles. In other words, when you have two fighting things, either it reconciles out and we learn, or it increases in the diametric force and becomes extreme. So somehow through evolution of our mind, our spirit, these opposites reconcile out over time. Does Zarathustra ever touch on that in his gathas? In other words, you know, we see it in nature, you know, like electron, protons, neutron. There's something invisible connecting these things that are very adversarial. And you see it eventually through, I think you talked about it a little bit, when you're fighting with somebody and you end up saying, you get empathetic and you say, oh, let's look at it from your point of view. You talked about it earlier. That's a little bit of that flavor. It's reconciling. It's an empathetic connection between what you thought was, quote, your enemy. You know,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's something that I play with.
Well, I can tell you my best opinion, and then, you know, you can take it from there. As I understand it, Zarathustra sees existence as one whole. So you, me, Dolat, Rebecca, all of us are just fragments or units of that one whole, okay? When Zarathustra talks about the two ways of being, the bad and the better, the harmful and the more beneficial, these two ways of being are encapsulated in a unit, which is living being. So at one level, it's encapsulated in what I would call the individual. But at another level, it's encapsulated in existence as a whole. of which individuals are a part. So in terms of how do they reconcile or get worse, that is an interesting question. I hope to discuss it in some detail in the next session. I said, how can Zarathustra be sure? I mean, if given the freedom to choose, how could the good end be inevitable? Well, Zarathustra has an idea which appeals to me about how this is brought about, and I'd like to save it for the next time, if you don't mind.
I'll be here.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Patient.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Okay, Farshid, Dina, when you put your forearm on your desk, your microphone gets blocked. Thank you, Farshid. At least you didn't try to shoot me, huh? Sorry, I'm just teasing Karishma. All right. From Keki Dadachanji to everyone. If individual material existence ends when one has reached a perfect state, we should be able to observe some human beings who are approaching that state. Apart from a handful of prophets, we don't see such people. Does that introduce doubt in your mind about the probability of existence as a whole attaining such a state? Well, Keki, that depends on whether our earthly existence here is the only arena for the perfecting process. If there are other arenas for the perfecting process, in other words, as you evolve, if you get to the point where you're a really, really good person, but still have a little bit of the other side in you, maybe the next stage of the perfecting process would be in some other arena. I've often thought that if I should wind up in such an arena, I'd be low man on the totem pole, and everyone would say, oh, what an idiot, or what a jerk. I'm not sure I'd like that. But anyway, I really don't know. These are all just speculations. But do I have doubt on the probability of the existence as a whole? Keki, to think is to doubt. So yes, I cannot tell you definitely we have existence as a whole. It's an idea that appeals to me. It strikes a chord in me. It's something I've seen in Zarathustra's thoughts that it helps me to make sense of my life, which is why I like it. So that's the best I can do, Keki. Well, that's the last question. Does anyone have any other questions? I'd be happy to take them right with your words.
Thank you. I have a quick question, if I may. It was too long for me to write it. So, Muslim believe that there is a prophet. Ibrahim became the leader of the righteousness in their time. And then that is the good. And then they also, that's the good, the righteousness is the good.
Okay.
So who judge it? We don't know. And then there is a bad, and then the bad force comes in. I don't know who is the bad. I guess the evil is the bad, but that's not the point. I'm not quite sure if the Zoroastrians believe in duality in reality and what the Muslims believe that their prophet Ibrahim believes. So I'm just kind of confused here. I would love to learn from you, but I'm not quite sure from the point of view of Zoroastrians and duality. If you can just open this time or next time, what do you really exactly mean about duality in reality? Thank you.
Sure. Duality in reality is a good way of encapsulating the idea. Many years ago, there was a judge on the United States Supreme Court, Justice Cardozo, who cautioned us against being imprisoned by the tyranny, what he called the tyranny of labels. I've come to think that too often we try to impose labels on Zarathustra's thought, which don't really fit his entire thought. And I think duality in reality is one such label. Night and day, that's the duality.
That's not duality.
Sweet and sour is
That's
a duality.
reality. No, that's
and
reality.
in reality, that's a duality
That's
in
reality.
reality.
Oh, that's a duality. That is your judgment. Thank you. Sorry, I shouldn't be interrupting. Sorry, go ahead.
No. In other words, reality is full of dualities, not just opposite dualities, but the gray areas in between as well. I think that's why I rather like the way Zarathustra says, he doesn't speak of polarities. He doesn't say good and evil. He says in 30.3, bad and more good. In 45.2, he says harmful and more beneficial. So these are not polarities, but they are certainly different in nature. And I think if you look at your own experience, which is the closest to reality that each of us has, you will see things that are cruel and are kind, and in between, that are false and true, and in between, that are selfish and unselfish, and in between. So I don't quite know
That's
how
a
to.
judgment.
You
agree those are judgments. Those are judgments.
We're
thinking about it. Exactly. We're thinking about it.
Well, it's more than just thinking about it. In other words, if someone were to cut off my hand, that would not just be in my mind, that would be in my reality.
That's right.
I think it's more than just thinking about it. Some dualities definitely are limited to the mind. Others, are not. So my advice would be, don't let yourself get trapped by words. Try to look past the word to how it applies in your life.
That becomes reality. Thank you so much, Rand. That is reality. Thank you. Yes, indeed. If we pass our thoughts, we become here at this moment to learn from you. Thank you. I learned so much from you. Thank you.
And Rita, I learned from you, and I thank you because you forced me to think, which is a gift. So I thank you.
Thank you for your teaching.
Okay, let's see.